A lot of people just reuse their content every 3 months. 3 months later, no one's going to remember you've posted that. So you can't just copy and paste it, but you can just reword it and repurpose. Don't overcomplicate it. You can get so bogged down and overwhelmed with, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to be in the camera. It's got to be perfect. Everyone's going to see it. What platforms do we use? You spiral and you put it off. Don't overthink it. Every day they see you sat in the same place, talking about the same thing, with no variety in your voice, people stop watching. You need to keep it dynamic, change up your environment. There usually is a blueprint to the virality of certain posts. You'll have a hook, but there'll be a content gap. There's 5 different type of hooks that you can use. X versus Y hook, cliffhanger hook, negative hook, positive hook, and number 5. You don't understand the opportunities that come from social media until you post, and then they come and you're like, why have I not done this sooner?
Mark your calendars. The 2025 Property Developer Show is coming to 5 major cities across the UK, bringing the best service providers and developers together under one roof. On the 5th of March, we kick off in the first show at Milton Keynes, followed by Bristol on the 30th of April, Birmingham on the 16th of July, and then we're heading north to Manchester on the 10th of September, followed by our final stop in Newcastle upon Tyne on the 15th of October. Don't miss out on connecting with other developers, service providers, and industry leaders. Visit propertydevelopershow.co.uk to book your free ticket today. Welcome to another episode of the Property Developer Show, the podcast. Today, I'm joined by Christie Kirwan, who is a marketeer who specialises in property developers, property sourcing companies, as well as property-specific businesses. So today, we're going to be getting some insights into the marketing world. Christie.
Hello, are you okay?
All good. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. I mean, obviously the studios in Liverpool, and I imagine you've not had far to travel today.
No, well, I'm based in Manchester, but I'm actually back in Liverpool this week, so it's
Good.
quite nice.
Good stuff. Happy days. So sort of, I guess, jumping straight into the marketing side of things, what are sort of common mistakes you see people make in marketing, property marketing specifically?
Oh, that's a good question. I think not being consistent and not having a clear brand message is what I would say. I can pinpoint when looking at a lot of businesses, like when people come to me, they're not very clear on what they want. So the messaging online is a bit mismatched. Mm-hmm. So when I sit down with people, we have to get really clear on what is it that you ultimately want from your social media, because sometimes people want investment, but they're putting stuff out there like they want a personal brand and they just want awareness. Mm-hmm. They're not necessarily targeting investors. So I'd say, if I was to say one thing, it'd be getting clear basically on what they want and not targeting the right people. And delivering that consistently
as well. Yeah. So when you're kind of sitting down with, I'm a new client, we're sitting down, it's our initial conversation, what sort of things are you looking for that I'm maybe already doing? And then what sort of things are you looking for in terms of like, right, here's how we're going to create a clear strategy. This is going to be the action plan that we sort of bring together, and this is how we're going to deliver it. What does that sort of look like?
So we sit down and I look at the business as a whole, look at the service offering that you provide, and we look at what are your goals for the short, medium, long term. We look at what you actually want from your social media. So what is the goal of being online? Because you might have an ultimate business goal, but that might be different from what you want from your social media as well. Mm. So it kind of just depends on those things. Once we're very clear on that, we look at the offering, what type of content we can create around that, and look at the content pillars. So you should really have 3. It should be like one educational, one kind of talking about your service offering, and one being about value and giving value back to your audience, basically. Mm-hmm. So once we've looked at that, we create a strategy. We look at where your consumer is, what platform they're on, what type of content they want to see as well. And we take a holistic approach. We do the branding. We make sure the social media pages are optimised for that. We do a content day, make sure that we get the right content so you don't have to think about it, and it all gets planned in a month in advance. So it's a very seamless process. But at the start, it has to be, does it align with your goals? Does it align with your audience? And if it doesn't, then it's not going to convert. So it has to line up, basically. Yeah,
that makes sense. So from a more technical perspective, say I've done 1 or 2 projects, I'm investing with my own money, and I want to kind of scale up my development sort of career, business, whatever you want to call it. What sort of things or would come up in conversation when we're sat down now? You know, what sort of questions would you be asking me to sort of get that kind of goal in terms of what the content's going to be and what the sort of delivery or what I'm trying to achieve from social media, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so obviously we'd look at kind of who is also doing it. So who else is in the industry? Do you want to be a personal brand? Somebody who gets people to trust them for you and showing your projects and what you do day to day, and, you know, really focus it on you as the person and why they should trust you with their money? Or do you want to be almost like a corporation and have like a business brand and look more like the big development companies and have, like, you don't want to be face first, you know, camera facing. So we'd probably really get clear on that first. And then you look at what's working well, which either one that you decide to. We'll say you choose the personal brand approach. First thing I'd say is get started on LinkedIn. Tell your story, your wins, your losses, you know, everything that you can share, because people buy into people. And then I would also probably be, if you're going to do a personal brand, I'd definitely be on Instagram and I'd definitely be on TikTok as well. Being a business brand is a little bit different. If you're going to be a business brand, I'd definitely say if you want investor money, you should also be on LinkedIn. You should definitely be on Instagram. TikTok, maybe not so much. And, you know, there's different messaging that you'd come across with that. So if you're a business, it's more like, okay, what returns you provide to investors? You probably wouldn't necessarily say where you've fucked up. Like, you'd try and be a little bit more polished. But as a personal brand, I'd say, like, show the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah, it makes sense. So in terms of, I guess that, so we've sort of specified what that looks like. We've kind of come down, right, I'm going to go personal brand route. That's the route I want to go down. What sort of then the next step in terms of then actually creating that content? So, I mean, you know, I think it's easy to, I guess, create content, but to create good content, that's obviously a different scenario. So how could, you know, I say we, you and I in this scenario, how can we create some good content? What's the kind of things that people are looking for in the current market? Because it's a very crowded space, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a very controversial space though as well. And with controversy comes actually quite a bit of attention. And if you do it the right way, it's easier for a post to go viral, because obviously you get engagement, so you get people commenting on your posts, which boosts the algorithm, which then will show it to more people. What I think you need to be careful of if you want to do it that way is, obviously you've got to have quite a thick skin, because you are going to get people basically saying, you know, HMOs ruin the economy and all that stuff. When
I think that was a polite version of what people say.
And like, you've got to be prepared for it. If you're going to put yourself out there, like, it's something that you do need to be prepared for. So obviously we have to have that conversation of like, okay, if you're going to do it like that, you know, that's a reality of the situation. But you can also do it a different way. So what we'd sit down, we'd basically figure out all the different ways we could create content. So all of the developments that you've currently got going on, we could probably go there for the day and shoot loads of different stuff. We could do walk arounds of the properties. We could do educational stuff where you sat down and you're going through numbers. You could do the whole thing with hooks, where it's like, this is how I made £1 million in one transaction, you know, and it's, you've got the eye grab straight away. So you've just got to find what's comfortable for you as well, because a lot of people aren't comfortable doing that because they think it's false. So you've got to just decide what's comfortable for yourself, and like have a mix of, okay, well, will that convert as well? And it's got to be a bit of a middle ground. So
sure, yeah, that makes sense. In terms of, I guess, then we've got that momentum going, you know, people are maybe inquiring, how do we keep that consistency? Because delivering content consistently, again, you know, early on, we're coming up with loads of ideas. I can post about this, but I suppose eventually you maybe get to a point where your content fatigue. How do you keep that fresh?
So I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but a lot of people just reuse their content every like 3 months.
Right, okay, interesting.
So it might be slightly different. Obviously, it might be a different part of the development. It might be a different development altogether that they're using, but it will be the same content. Everyone just reuses it, and everything is content if you think about it. So like, for example, if you create an Instagram post, that can be repurposed on LinkedIn. You just have to change it slightly, obviously, to fit the platform. And then if you post a post on LinkedIn, 3 months later, no one's going to remember you've posted that. So it's just about, obviously you can't just copy and paste it, but you can just reword it and repurpose. I think people just, overcomplicate it a little bit. Like, it doesn't have to be that.
I just
difficult.
overcomplicated it, and that answer was amazing. So I've learned something there. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make on social media?
Biggest mistakes? I'd say using ChatGPT, if I said that right.
Yeah.
ChatGPT to write the content, because you can tell a mile away if somebody's gone, write me a LinkedIn post about returns for investors, and it'll just spit it out. There'll be hyphens everywhere. It'll be, the word insights will be in there somewhere, and it'll just be
crap.
Yeah, you'll be able to tell. The algorithm doesn't like it either, so it won't actually convert like very well. So, like, nobody's saying don't use it. Like, use it as an aid, but don't rely on it to create all your posts, because it's probably not going to get you very far, and it's not going to look authentic. It's probably going to shoot you in the foot.
Yeah. I see that a little bit. You can kind of tell.
You can tell, can't you?
Yeah. And some images as well that usually are fake news images. I think you're like, well, that's definitely AI generated. Okay, interesting. So I guess in terms of like the sort of opposite to that question, what are some of the best things or best bits of content that you've seen people sort of produce? What's the kind of go-to type of content, apart from obviously what you've kind of alluded to?
So I would say it obviously depends on the platform. LinkedIn, try and storytell, try and give value, relate to your audience in some way. Like, there's people that do it very well, and they've got like a really big audience that follow them. And there's been a lot of times as well where I've put something on and people have gone, oh, I seen you on LinkedIn through this person liking your post. So it's not just about who your audience is, it's about who their audience is as well when they've engaged with your content too. Obviously for TikTok and Instagram, Reels are huge, aren't they, at the moment? But you've got to do Reels well. And I think obviously every type of content has got its purpose, so not every post has to go viral. But I think a lot of the sat down, with the captions, if it's not dynamic enough, it doesn't grab attention. Especially if you do a video like that and it's your first one that you've done, people watch it because it's new. People haven't seen you do that type of content before. But if every day they see you sat in the same place talking about the same thing with no variety in your voice, and you just kind of drolling on, people start watching. So you need to keep it dynamic. Try and change up your environment. Like, I really like the ones where people are maybe walking around talking to the camera, if you don't want to do anything too jazzy, or if you are going to do a sit down video, make it dynamic. So change the zoom rate in the focus. Keep the captions changing. Use a bit of images just to spice it up a bit. It has to be engaging, because the attention span of somebody, I think you'd lose someone in something like 0.6 seconds or something ridiculous. Like, don't quote me on that, but it is a very...
I imagine it will be something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's only going to get shorter.
Oh yeah, because TikTok just melts your brain. Everyone's attention span's like scroll. And I'm guilty for it as well. But yeah.
I've been guilty for it. I've got an app called Opal, which is really good for screen time, because I assume most people will know the screen time on iPhone, where it just pops up and it's like 15 minutes or whatever. You just like cancel. Whereas Opal, you've got to go into the app. You've got to wait before you can actually unlock your app. So
I need to get that.
Do you know what? I started using it a lot in December, and it's because we're less busy in December, and I was just on social media way too much, and I just started, like, as much as it's great, of course.
Yeah.
But it's finding that balance with not just indulging in Reels crap. Usually.
Yeah, you've got to be a creator, not a consumer. Yeah. And if you can be, obviously everyone's a consumer to some extent, but I think if you're just consuming all the time, it's not a very productive thing to do with your time anyway.
No, definitely not. It's better to be on the other side of the fence, because it's more, fulfilling, I guess, is the right word for it. So in terms of, I guess, the difference between a personal brand and a company brand, what's typically the approach, and why are they usually different?
So it's funny, because some people will come to me and they'll be adamant that they want a personal brand and they'll want to talk to the camera and they'll want to do things. But a trend that I've actually seen quite often is that people come to me and want a personal brand, and very quickly they go, actually, I want to change. I want a company brand instead. So there's been a couple of times where I've done the pivot with people. And I think at first they don't understand how kind of time consuming it can be and how demanding it can be being in front of the camera all the time. So I think if you're somebody who necessarily doesn't want to be out there, having a company brand is probably better. I mean, they don't tend to perform as well on socials unless you've got somebody within the business being almost the front man.
Or woman.
Or woman, yeah. So yeah, they won't necessarily be as successful necessarily. They won't build as quickly, but obviously there's still a purpose. It's still a storefront for your business and for people that you, like your consumer, to go and see.
There's definitely pros and cons to both, I suppose. You know, the personal brand side, you've got to put the time in personally. And if you aren't on camera, then, you know, you're not getting that personal brand out there.
No.
But then on the company side, obviously it's harder to gain that traction. But from a scalability perspective, it makes it easier as you as a director or someone that runs a business to not have to be physically involved in the marketing. So I suppose it's finding that balance. In terms of, like, I guess the companies that you do work for, obviously you work with developers, sourcing agents and property sort of specific businesses. I guess it really just, do you see sort of property developers that are more, do you think it's necessary for them to have a personal brand?
No.
Okay.
I think it obviously, again, it depends on what they actually want to do. If ultimately they want to sell a business, it's probably not the best for them to do, because if you're obviously heavily involved and it relies on you, you can't sell it because you're the value within that business. So I think obviously it just depends, and there's no reason that you can't start having a personal brand and then you introduce somebody else slowly to the camera and then you take the step back and somebody else within the team is the face almost, and it can kind of shift to a little bit more corporate once you get there, because I know a lot of businesses start and they are a one-man band and then they evolve and they become a big operation almost. So I think there's no harm pivoting if necessary, but I think obviously at the beginning you do need to have like a clear message. There's no point trying to do both. You need to just pick one and go with it.
Do you think in the early days, so say someone with no sort of property experience or is just trying to sort of break into the industry, do you think a personal brand works better than a company at that stage? Yeah. What sort of things can, obviously someone that hasn't got any projects, let's say, what sort of things can they be sort of posting about?
I'd be talking about, well, you'd be assuming that if they were wanting to start out, you'd assume that they'd be trying to grow the network. So you'd assume that they were going to networking events. You'd assume that they were trying to learn. You'd assume that, you know, they were trying to go and visit some site projects. They might be part of a network. They might be a mentee of somebody. So if I was just starting out, what I would be doing is I'd be looking at all the different things you can talk about, which are still related, but not necessarily doing things like development. Because if you can't talk about them, if you haven't got one, I'd be talking about went to this networking event, met this person. I'd be actively trying to reach out to people through LinkedIn and, you know, expanding your network and just finding out what other people do and how they do it. If you're in then a position that you want to gain investment, you've already then started posting about your network. So say, for example, somebody attended your show. They just went to kind of see what contacts they could make at your show, see what investment options they were, see what contacts they could make. If they did a LinkedIn post about that, they'd be associated with you and look at your network and look of all the people that you speak to. So I'd be posting, I'd be trying to get a bit of momentum, maybe on Instagram. If you want to do your days in the life and stuff on TikTok, I wouldn't be against you doing that, but I'd definitely 100% be doing LinkedIn. And then once you're ready, I'd be reaching out to investors. You know, you've already got that
credibility.
Yeah, you've already got the credibility there. So you've already got proof that, you know, you've got networks, that you're learning, and it's the trust. So if you haven't got a profile, they don't know who you are, but at least they get a bit of a feel for that. That
makes sense. So in terms of, I guess, without giving away too much of your kind of industry secrets, I guess, if you want to call it that, what sort of softwares are you using, scheduling systems, you know, any AI stuff that you can share?
So I'd say if you're just using LinkedIn, I'd schedule on the app. You can just schedule within LinkedIn, and that doesn't really affect the algorithm. Certain scheduling tools will affect your reach. So I would just be careful on which one you use. I think a good one is Later. I've used that a couple of times and that one works well. AI software, I don't use too much of it, which might be a bit of a rogue thing to say, but I prefer, and this might be a bit of a control thing, but I prefer to do all like the edits and everything.
What sort of software are you using to do the edits?
So we use CapCut, and then also I'll work with photographers sometimes, and then they'll do the edit. So it obviously depends on what level of editing you want. So CapCut or like a professional one, like is it Adobe?
Right. Yeah.
And then obviously Canva's one, but everyone knows about that. That's just more like for basic graphics and stuff.
Well, you say that, but some people don't know about Canva. I don't think.
Canva. Yeah, that's like more for like the basic things or just adding your logo into bits and bobs.
Cool, amazing. So I guess then we've kind of covered where to start, softwares to use, implementation of, I suppose, the content piece. So how do you, because one of the biggest things, it's easy to, I guess, get started in a way. You've got that honeymoon phase or whatever you want to call it. But the consistency, as we've alluded to early on, how do people create that consistency? Say that they're not working with you. Obviously, you would create that consistency, but they're just a one-woman, one-man band, and they're just wanting to be consistent with social media as well as running all the businesses. Like how does someone create that sort of consistency?
I'd say don't overcomplicate it, because I think you can get so bogged down and overwhelmed with, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to be in the camera. It's got to be perfect. Everyone's going to see it. What platforms do we use? And you spiral and you put it off. You procrastinate it. So what I would say is just don't overthink it. Pick an amount that you know you can be consistent with. So whether at the beginning that's 2 times a week, 3 times a week. If you've got more time, maybe that's 5 times a week. Pick one that you know that you can be consistent with, and then block out some time in your diary and do it all at once and schedule it so you then don't have to think about it. Just make it as easy as possible for yourself.
Would you recommend going at all of the platforms to begin with, or just trying to identify 1, 2, 3, 4?
I think, again, it depends how much time you've got and what your ultimate goal is. So I would always say if you want to create like business to business, like professional relationships, you'd always choose LinkedIn. If you're more looking to get in front of a consumer, you're probably going to want to be on Instagram. LinkedIn might not necessarily be the best platform for you to be on. So I'd definitely pinpoint which one you think your customer audience is going to be on. Definitely make that your priority. If you can only choose one, pick the one that you know is going to convert better for you. And then once you're in the rhythm and you feel like you can expand, then I'd expand onto the secondary platforms, if you will.
Just very quickly interrupting this episode, have you got a property deal in mind? Want to build or grow your portfolio but unsure how to obtain funding? No problem. At Roma Finance, they love to lend. The borrower first approach means Roma deliver flexible, tailored solutions that accommodate the diverse needs and experience of developers across residential and commercial projects. With a flexible criteria, Roma take time to understand each borrower's unique circumstances. Roma's attentive team are always equipped to handle and take on your requests. They will guide and support you throughout the property journey. Colleagues and customer relations are the beating heart of their business. Don't forget to explore Roma's website, romafinance.co.uk, for helpful resources, including articles and case studies to guide your financial decisions. Remember, Roma Finance love to lend. Your property goals are only a call or email away. Now back to the episode. So let's focus on LinkedIn then. What are those are there any sort of secrets or methods that you use to make sure that you're posting at the right time, that the content's engaging? I mean, I've seen some of your LinkedIn posts that have got like 200, 300, 400, 500 likes, which they just seem like normal posts to me, but obviously you've put the effort into putting it in front of the right people. Like what's your sort of methodology to getting that level of engagement?
So number one, again, consistency. So I post regularly on LinkedIn. I also try and talk about things and topics that, one, the audience wants to know, but not something that not necessarily everyone who's doing what I do talks about as well. So I think one of the posts that you're referring to is I did one about Renica, who's a big developer in Manchester, and I actively spoke about their brand. That got a lot of traction because obviously people know the brand, they can put their 2 pence in, and it got a lot of engagement, and it was actually quite useful for, obviously the engagement was quite useful for the reach on that one. Another one I'd say is always put a picture of yourself on there if it's relevant. So every post I put on, I will put a picture, usually of me, on the post with it. And sometimes I get comments and they're like, was this picture necessary? Do you like, or like, and do you know what? Sometimes it's people who you think you're a real professional. Why are you sending me putting hate comments onto me LinkedIn post? But it works.
Yeah. Well, that engagement only boosts it and puts it in front of the right
Thank
people.
You.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's the way you've got to kind of look at that is, if you get 10% hate and 90% positive.
Yeah, you've just got to let it roll over you.
Yeah. Because you always, no matter what you do, whether you're left or right, someone has always got something to say.
Yeah, 100%.
Is in the opposite of what your opinion is. And that's just the world we live in.
Yeah.
And that's how we evolve. That's how things get better. That's how things sometimes get worse. But that's just the nature of the world. So I think you definitely have to have that thick skin, I guess. Yeah. I don't even think it's thick skin personally. I think it's just having that sort of foresight to go, well, their opinion is completely irrelevant to me cracking on with creating content.
It's that age-old saying, isn't it, of, well, I don't really care what you think because you're not living the life that I'd want to live type of thing. So you've just got to be confident in what you're doing and go with it. I suppose you get it as well with being all over the socials as well.
Yeah, I mean, our best TikTok, which is the amazing Wendy Whitaker Large, has about 520,000 views, something like that. The majority of the engagement is people just arguing in the comments about
back and forth,
landlords and HMOs and, just random stuff, even though the topic isn't about student accommodation, it's still a conversation that's happening within the comments. And obviously that's what pushes it. And from that, I think we gained from that single post, in fact, hold that thought. So we've got 530,000 views on this one post. That's the hook.
Okay.
And here's some of the comments. I think it helps on the type of algorithm I'm in. So the top comment that I get is the tenants should always pay, not the landlords. That's got 5 replies to it.
I mean, that obviously depends on what it is, doesn't it? That's a very controversial statement within itself.
Single person discount should be 50%, not 75%. Completely irrelevant to HMO, council tax. That's got 29 sub replies. To be honest, the fact that HMOs pay the same council tax is directly subsided to the HMOs. They should pay an increased rate or have a levy on their profits. That's got 154 likes, 22 comments. Government making it next to impossible for the working class to move up in life. Interesting. I agree with that. That's got 675 likes, 39 comments. But I mean, it's just people putting their 2 pence in and then other people not agreeing with that 2 pence. And
everyone's got their own opinion and no one's opinion is the same.
Exactly.
And you're never going to change somebody else's opinion, especially just on a comment on Instagram. But it's funny because you almost want it, don't you, to boost
100%.
boost the algorithm. So you're like, okay, well, you argue amongst yourselves, and
So from that one TikTok, we had obviously 530,000 views. The average watch time is 39.7 seconds. Total play time is 5,990 hours. That is crazy. Of that, 3,092 people followed us off the back of that one post. So I mean, that in itself, like, you only need one decent. I mean, this is what happens to people that go viral, isn't it? I suppose they get one post that does absolutely phenomenally well, and that's it. They've been made.
Yeah. And there usually is kind of like a blueprint to like the virality of certain posts. So you'll have a hook, but there'll be a content gap. So it'll be like, have you ever wondered why X equals Y? And they won't tell you till the end of the video. So people are like, will watch the whole video And like, but I want to just know why.
Yeah.
And because people are curious, they'll just watch it. And then obviously that boosts it as well. So there's different ways you can like hack the system almost to.
Definitely. I mean, it's how like, that Ocho woman got so famous.
Yeah.
Just literally one viral post, like changed her whole entire life. Like social media is like mental.
It's
really.
powerful. It is powerful if you know how to use it.
Yeah. I mean, some people obviously accidentally get famous,
Yeah.
but if you're trying to beat the algorithms or consistent, because a lot of these like content creators though that I sort of follow, I always find that they've been doing it for like a decade, just posting, barely getting any views. Like the consistency, which is obviously what we've been alluding to, is often like the most powerful thing. And like now they're obviously super famous and TikTok stars and whatever else you want to call it.
Oh my God, it's crazy. Like they started just in 2020, they started early enough and they were consistent enough and stuck it out. And look at them now, they're all absolutely loaded.
Yeah.
You think you just show them what you're eating a day.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Literally. Yeah. But I suppose that's part of well, it's anything, whether you go in the gym, running a business, being on social media, it's all about consistency.
Yeah.
And it's creating, as you've sort of mentioned, not overcomplicating it and creating ways to make it as simple as possible. So kind of on that point then, what sort of your methodology to working with so many brands? Like how do you keep on top of obviously everyone's different needs and making sure that everyone's maximizing their content delivery?
I've got to be organised. I will say that I have got to be organised. I'm lucky that when I work with certain clients, I work with really good photographers who will do all the edits and things like that. So like I'll do the strategy. I am there on the day, but sometimes I've got to take care of the content. Sometimes I don't. So for them, they do like the edits and then I've just got to do like final drafts and then that all gets scheduled for a month after it's approved. So that helps. But when I've got to do the edits and things like that, I've actually got to block time out and make sure I almost set boundaries with people, because if you don't set boundaries with people think they can just ring you every 10 minutes and like, well, what are we doing with this? What are we doing with that? And that's fine. Like, I don't want to, alienate anybody that I'm working with, but I think sometimes you can be a little bit too generous with your time. So I think that's something I've learned, that I've got to actually, map out as I've got busier and busier. You've got to map out certain times for things. And, if somebody wants to ring me for a conversation, it's got to kind of work for me as well as them.
Yeah.
No. I hope it don't sound
I think, no, absolutely. I think it's a good client would understand that.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, it's almost impossible to, give, in the next hour, speak to 10 clients and give them the maximum possible value of working with you.
Yeah.
It would be just completely impossible. But to speak to all those 10 clients every hour, the outcome would be completely different. And I think when you're a subcontractor, you've got to just, I suppose, bear that in mind.
Yeah, because I do work closely with like a lot of my clients' teams and I go in for monthly meetings with them. I have weekly catch-ups with them. They've got me personal number. I don't mind speaking to them one-to-one. But I think obviously it's got to the point now where I've got to, sometimes it'll be like, okay, I can't speak to you today, but I will give you a call first thing tomorrow. And it's just about having that balance, because I'm running a business as well at the end of the day.
Of course, yeah.
And I do care about their business, but ultimately my business comes first.
Yeah. And that's business.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
So I guess for your kind of inspiration, what sort of accounts do you follow where you kind of get marketing inspiration? How do you stay on the forefront of what's happening? And it's never ever evolving space.
Yeah, it's something that you constantly have to be upskilling on, and like it's like the same with anything though. You never know everything. You've got to constantly keep on top of it, haven't you? So I like watching obviously Iman Gadzi. That he's a big one.
What's that?
Iman Gadzi.
Okay.
He does. He teaches people how to earn 10k a month from the marketing agencies, but he has some really good nuggets of how he does certain things. So I maybe watched him a little bit more in the beginning of my business career, but every now and again I'll listen to certain videos and stuff which I find useful. Alex Hormozy and Layla Hormozy, they've got some some great content about marketing. His books are great. They're all about lead generation and content. I really like, what's her name? There's a girl who's on TikTok. I think she might be called Personal Brand something. She's an American girl.
Right.
And she does really good content about personal brands. But she's got her own business, so it's all a marketing funnel for her. And it's honestly, I'll have to see if I can think it, but it's great. The stuff that she does.
Amazing.
And yeah, they've all found like their own little niche and who they're targeting as well, which is interesting because once you understand marketing, you can then pick apart anyone's content. It's funny because you look at it obviously from a different perspective.
So when you sort of say that, then is that kind of like the marketing techniques that they use, in a sense of like, is it the hooks that are different, or is it the type of person that they're aiming that type of content at? Like what sort of stands out with the, obviously alluding to what you've just said?
So they've all got their own style of content. Like not one piece of their content is, it's the same for them, but it's not the same between them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like Iman Gadzi, for example, he does the whole like sitting down talking, but he has like a lot of animation in the background. He talks very like directly to you, as if you sat having like a one-to-one call with him almost. Alex Hormozy, when he does stuff, he tends to do stuff on a whiteboard and he does stuff completely ad hoc, and he comes across really well in his content, him and his wife Layla. I think that's it. Layla. And the other girl, I think her name's Personal Brand Launch. I think that she is. And she has like, she's got certain colours that she uses. So it's usually green. And there's a lot of animation on her TikTok videos and it's her talking. But she'll have a hook and it'll be like, there's this piece of content got this amount of engagement, this amount of content got this amount of engagement. This is the one thing between them that made it different. So it's that same thing, like I was saying, they've got the content gap. So you watch to the end of the video because you want to know what it is.
Yeah.
So you can see their content from different things. So you can look at them and analyse the content that they're creating and look at like how that works for them. And you can also take their tips on board as well from what they're saying. So you can analyse it in two different ways. And I think, obviously, if you can take stuff that you know that you can do, like all anyone ever does in business is take bits that work from different people and put it together and learn. So it's just about taking what you think you can do, but making it your own and just trying it and going. And if it doesn't work, you can always create different content, because not every type of content works for everyone, and that's okay. You've just got to find what works.
Yeah. I suppose that's the overcomplicated part that you sort of mentioning, that people maybe get a bit overwhelmed with to begin with. I guess how do you kind of lead into that level of marketing? Is it that you just create something that is basic and not worry about the actual quality of it, or should you be focusing on the quality early on? Like what's the balance with that?
So again, it depends. Like I think iPhone cameras are good enough to create a quality video. It doesn't have to. You don't have to be like a professional videographer to do it. And I actually think some of the like photographer videographer content sometimes falls a bit flat on TikTok, because people like, TikTok is an authentic platform. People like authenticity on there. So you probably are going to do better picking up your phone and talking to it. Whereas obviously if you've got a website or maybe you're doing an advert, you probably want the professional photography. So if you're just getting started, that's probably likely not going to be you. So I'd just pick up the camera, and whether you're talking to the camera, whether you get somebody to follow you while you're talking, even if you don't want to go on camera straight away, create reels. Have you seen the people do like a lot of stories with reels nowadays, and it'll be like, this is my first property development, and it'll be a picture of the development, and you'll swipe across and it'll just have information on the slides. They do really well. And then you can also have the ones where it's like a video of just like a street and you put like the writing over it. If you use the right hook, if you use the right text, and if you use the right sound with that, they do really well.
How would someone go about picking those elements then?
So the sounds, the apps have now got a feature where you can see what sounds are trending. If you're somebody who uses TikTok and Instagram a lot, you'll know what they are, because they'll be the ones that just start creeping up on every video. So you'll know what they are. You've just got to try and get them at the beginning before they're like the super viral, because then they just get lost. Hooks, it's like I said, there's 5 different type of hooks that you can use. Let's see if I can remember them all off the top of my head. So there's like the X versus Y hook, the cliffhanger hook, negative hook, positive hook, and number 5, I believe, is a question hook. So, do you want to know about X? And then you obviously have your content gap, and then you answer at the end.
Nice.
So yeah, I think they're the 5.
And then when it comes to sort of filming the actual content, then is it again dependent on people just sort of sitting in front of the camera, or do you recommend kind of changing the environment within the sort of content, or does it depend on what they're trying to produce?
I think it depends, and like you said, you don't want to overcomplicate it. So if you feel comfortable the first time round just speaking to the camera and you might get 2 videos from it, but it's 2 videos that you didn't have. So I'd say just go for it. Try and do it on your own, and just give yourself some time to get comfortable, because you do get more comfortable. Like you'll know.
Oh yeah.
Like at first you sit down and you're like, and like I even now with clients, people always go, oh, I can't do it, and everyone always says it, and they're like, I know, but we're gonna have to do this 10 times, and I'm like, it's fine. Everyone does it 10 times. Everyone messes up, but you never know, because when you see it online, it's edited. You don't see how many takes it's taken people to get that one right.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I'd just say, don't be hard on yourself. Just go for it.
Yeah.
And you can always edit it if it's not perfect.
And worst case, you can just use the grid that you mentioned, the pictures, flicking through the pictures instead, with the right hook and text and that sort of stuff as well. But I suppose again, it's a dependent question. But I guess if you want to really get your face out there and I suppose get your personal brand going, I suppose you would recommend 100% having your face on camera.
Yeah. And if you don't feel comfortable doing it first, like you don't have to do it straight away. Like you can ease yourself in, because you get a lot of, oh, I seen you on TikTok the other day. Oh, that's cringe. What are they doing? And people get worried about what people are talking about them. And so if it takes you posting just without your face for the first couple of weeks, just so people can get over the initial thing of just seeing you post, because when you post your face, they're going to do the same thing as well. So you've just got to block it out, as cringy as it is. You've got to block out what people say and just know that what you're doing is for you. Like, we live on a floating rock at the end of the day. Like, it's not that deep. It's fine. Like, people aren't going to know who you are in 10 years, God, in 100 years. So it's not that deep. Yeah,
well, they might not know who you are in 10 years if you stop posting.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, I think obviously we alluded to it earlier, but you know, whether you go left or right, people are always going to have something to say.
Yeah, so you might as well do what you want.
Yeah. And it is no matter, you know, if you buy a small house or you buy the biggest house on planet Earth, someone will either say, oh, it's too small or it's too big. Yeah. And that's just the world, again, the world we live in. So it's just a measure of just going out there and doing it for those that I suppose are worried about that first step and getting that momentum.
Yeah, like you say, when you're on TikTok and you see somebody, have you seen all the videos at the minute and people are doing like exposure therapy? So there'll be someone on a plane and they'll go, can't wait for our holiday, guys, woo, and like they'll be in a plane, they'll just be filming themselves standing up in the middle of a plane doing that, and everyone's just looking at them like, who's this doing it?
Yeah.
Like, but at the end, nobody's going to remember it after that.
No, absolutely not.
Like, so you've just got to, even if everyone thinks you're cringe, but you find the right audience of, well, the world's big, isn't it? So you find the right couple of 100,000 people in the world that are on your wavelength, then you found your people. Not everyone has to like what you're doing. It's
like those guys that go into, I'm pretty sure that they're in lifts in London Underground, and randomly you'll be like, and he'll be like, time to do a quiz, and he starts like in this lift. Obviously it's awkward in a lift anyway.
Yeah, can't escape. Everyone's like, what the hell's going on?
Everyone's like stood there and he's like doing these riddles, and I swear he always starts it like, you know, stay silent if you want to hear this riddle. Obviously no one says anything and he just comes out. It's brilliant. I mean, it makes me cringe so much.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
It's just, so funny.
But you've seen
reaction.
It?
Yeah.
I bet he's getting paid a lot of money off TikTok to be doing it.
Yeah. And he's just, I can imagine he is himself. He's literally doesn't care about anyone's judgment, probably living his best life. Yeah. I mean, it's, if you've got someone that can do that level, posting about your property deals is nothing really.
Yeah, it is. It's just, you've got to put yourself out there to get the opportunities. Like, you don't understand the opportunities that come from social media until, you know, you post and then they come and you're like, wow, like, why have I not done this sooner?
Yeah, I can imagine. So I suppose to round off the episode then, to kind of put an overview perspective on, I guess, the marketing and put a sort of ribbon on what we've discussed today, what are kind of the first few steps people can take off? They've listened to this podcast, kind of get yourself in their shoes. How can we sort of push them over the edge to go and do it after they've listened to this episode?
Okay, so I'd start with goals. Figure out what goals you have for your business and for your social media as well. So if you want investment, you're probably going to be looking at LinkedIn. If you want a personal brand for investment, I'd still definitely be using LinkedIn, but I'd also be doing Instagram and TikTok, but you're going to have to be probably out there. You're going to have to be showing your face because you want people to build the credibility with you, build your personal brand, because people buy from people. And I'd be reaching out to investors as well on LinkedIn once you've kind of got a bit of a backlog of content there, just so you've got almost like a bit of a page, a bit of a storefront, so that you can look back and go, okay, this is a real person who is actually doing some things. And then when you're creating the content, you should look at your content pillars. So figure out what they are, what value can you give, how can you educate people, what are your service offerings, create content around that. Again, it doesn't have to be video content. Video content does work very well, though, obviously on Instagram and TikTok. LinkedIn, I'd say just story tell, but always put a picture of yourself on there if you can, and just try to be as consistent as you can, and try not to worry about it too much. And I know it's easier said than done, but if you can just bulk create your content, bulk copyright and schedule it, and forget about it until the next month when you've got to do it again.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it any better myself. I think that really does put a ribbon on the conversations that we sort of had today. And hopefully people have sort of got some clarity around marketing. But maybe if they want some extra help, how can people go about getting in touch with you to get that extra help?
So I'm on LinkedIn, just me, Christie Kirwan. And then I'm also on Instagram as Ocho The Agency, which is my agency's business account on Instagram.
Amazing. Well, we'll put obviously all the bits and bobs in the description, but I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
It's been some good insights, and I've learned some stuff as well. So it's always good when I get a guest like that.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Obviously, Christie is an amazing guest, and hopefully that's given you the insights you need to up your marketing game. As I say in every single episode, please do like and subscribe if you've made it this far. And of course, please do leave a review for us. It helps us continue to get amazing guests like Christie today. We'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.